Hey everyone, welcome to today's podcast. Before we dive into it, if you guys are a fan of Willy Wonka like I am, you're going to love this episode. We dive into what the true meaning behind the world of imagination is, and I tell you exactly how to get your world of imagination going. So stay tuned for that. Before we go into that, again, this is going to be the J Rendina Podcast. I'm going to be putting out 2 a month, ideally. We're going to be talking all about service-based businesses. I truly believe that small business is the backbone of this country. I love small business. I own service-based businesses, and I'm going to continue to grow that, and I want to share knowledge to you. My vision really is to help raise the standards of small business. And I hope by delivering this knowledge, you guys can put it into your business and grow it, because that's my vision. And if you get any value from it, please like, subscribe, share, because we want to grow the show. We want to deliver knowledge. So please go ahead and do that on YouTube, Instagram, wherever you do your social media. So what we're going to deep dive into today is what it takes to create a vision and what it takes to make that vision work. We're going to talk about how do you define a vision? What is it? We want to talk about how to make your vision big and powerful. We also want to talk about how you get others to buy into your vision, because that's an important aspect to any business. If other people are not in line with your vision, or if they're not bought in, you're not going to succeed. Creating a vision and growing your vision is crucial for any service-based business. And then we're going to talk about how do you put that vision into work, and how do you make that your world of imagination become real. Now, if you guys saw Willy Wonka, The World of Imagination, this is one of my favorite movies, honestly, and I actually have a tattoo of Willy Wonka on my leg. That's how much I truly believe in the story behind this. And the world of imagination sums up everything, right? The whole concept of the movie is through true visualization and creation. That's really all it is. If you really listen to that song, when they're singing it, whatever he wanted, he created. And that chocolate factory is what Willy Wonka created. So it's so valuable to look at a movie like that and just be like, wow, this is amazing. And yes, it's quirky, it's fun, but the truth of the matter is you can create that as well. And Willy Wonka had his vision. He went along with his vision, and then he created it and he passed it on. So very valuable lessons there. We could probably do a whole episode on that as well, which we will in the future. So a couple things to take away from that movie. You know, it was all about creating a vision and going after it, right? Like, that was a big part there, because he didn't just say, oh, I'm just going to make this chocolate factory. He went after it and created this entire thing, right? It shows manifestation. Whatever you believe in, it's true. They thought about it, and he created it. And it shows creativity is key. Willy Wonka was extremely eccentric. That dude was very eccentric, and he was creative to the point where he was able to build this chocolate factory that so many people wanted to be a part of and wanted to be involved with. So creating that world's imagination is key. Now, for me, a story I want to talk about is really how I first started Iron Health. And this is something that my vision came to reality. When I first started, I literally rented a small corner of an office in a personal training studio with a guy who was, let's say, not the best to work with. It was just an interesting stepping stone for me to create. I had a table in his office paying him monthly rent. I had a stim unit, and I was able to use his equipment literally in the corner. Now, during this time, well, one, I had 2 other jobs just to make sure I survived. So that's the reality of entrepreneurship, but we'll dive into that more specifically. But during this time, I remember driving up and down the street in the town I was in, which is in Briarcliff Manor, New York. And I remember looking at spaces and just trying to go see different spaces, being like, all right, where can this facility or where can this company grow to? That was my first thing. Like, where am I going to make this grow? Now, I came across a space and I toured it when I was first looking to jump from this small corner to an office. And I remember touring the space and being like, wow, this is the perfect space. It was already built out, 2,000 square feet, what I wanted. Had bathrooms, it had locker rooms. Just needed some paint and some different decor to fit my style and Iron Health style. And I remember talking to the landlord there and the brokers trying to negotiate a deal. And I was just in business. I had no money. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I was trying to negotiate a certain amount of rent free for 6 months to be like, listen, I need to get up on my feet before I can really start to pay you guys. Like, that's the truth and reality of business. If you don't have that money, you're not going to be able to pay people. And they just were like, no, we can't do that. I was like, fuck, okay, this isn't going to work. So luckily I found another space. I moved Iron Health into that space. This was what we called Iron Health 2.0. Now, the whole time I always had that other space in the back of my mind. I knew I wanted to go there. Truth be told, during this process, I was actually doing a lot more personal development and growing as a person. And I was involved with coaches. So I had people helping me develop as a person. So one thing I came across during that process was the power of visualization. Now, if you're like me, you hear that and you're like, oh, this is all bullshit. This is just foo-foo, whatever. But the truth of the matter is, visualization is actually you training your brain to rectify and notice these things that are changing. So what I did during this process was like, I know where I want to locate Iron Health. I know where I want it to be. I know what I want it to look like. And before I would go to bed every single night, I would sit there for 20 minutes and just envision Iron Health. And that's that original space that I said I walked through and it didn't work out. So I would envision what it looked like, would envision what it felt like, how many tables I can get in there, how many rooms I can get in there. And during this process, I was still running my other Iron Health where my other office was. Now, mind you, some time went by. I opened a couple other facilities. And then something told me to reach out to a broker. So I reached out to this broker that originally showed me the space. She's like, yeah, the person they have in there right now, they're not big fans of. And I was like, really? She's like, yeah. So I was like, okay, let's try to make this work. 3 months down the line of negotiations and really trying to figure it out, I signed a lease. And now we're currently operating in that space that I visualized 5 years ago. So there's just power in that, like just power in visualization. Now, is visualization and vision, are they the same thing? They can be. The difference is visualization is something you do in private. Vision is how you tell it to the world. So I had to make sure I brought how I envisioned that space and told it to the world, and that was the vision. So now we're operating in that space. If you guys see where our Briarcliff location is, it's a beautiful space. I envisioned that when I first started Iron Health. Now, if that's not world of imagination, I don't know what is. So we're going to dive into some practicality, some ways to actually make sure your vision is a success, right? Because I think it's important to say, hey, that's all great, but how do I start? Where do I start? So one thing I want to talk about that we're going to start with for you creating your vision. Write a letter from your future self 10 years in the future. So this is crucial. My wife and I actually do this every year. I write a letter 10 years in the future to myself, directed to myself. Now it's private. No one's going to see it, but you have that on paper. I would give 5 recommendations in this category. Your finance. How do you want your finances to look? How do you want your family to look? What does your faith/mindset look? Because they go hand in hand. Your fitness. How's your fitness look? And how's your freedom look? Call them the 5 F's. And then we can give you those notes too if that interests you. But the 5 F's in that 10-year plan are crucial to hit upon. And you should be looking at this every year. Like, hey, how am I doing in relation to where I'm envisioning my life? If you're not creating your life, then like someone else is creating it for you, right? That's another side note. But what you do with this 10-year plan, one, you're putting it on paper. You're embodying yourself in 10 years from now. If you're 20 and then say you're 20, 10 years you're 30, which is crazy to think because I'm in my 30s. But if you're writing to yourself from when you're 20 to your 30, you're giving yourself a perspective shift. You're pulling yourself out of the day-to-day and saying, like, how do I want my life to look in 10 years? So it's clarity. Actually putting on paper matters. It can't just be in your head. You have to write it down. You want to make sure you're revisiting this yearly, right? Like a 10-year letter to yourself, like I said before. You have to kind of always check and balance yourself, because if you're not online where you want to go, or let's say your life shifted, how's your life going to alter? You're recreating it. So every year you're envisioning this, you're recreating that 10-year plan. You want to keep it simple but big. I've gone through different aspects of my life where it's like, oh shit, I want this. The more I put onto it, the more confusing it gets, the more it's likely not to happen. So make sure you're keeping it simple but big, right? Make it digestible but very big. And then you also want to make sure it's written with gratitude and openness, because you want to create a feeling. So if you're writing to yourself from 10 years from the future, you're creating a gratitude feeling of like, wow, look at my life. I'm filled with gratitude of how it is right now, because you're training your body to feel that. It's neurological more than it is foo-foo, right? Train your body to feel gratitude. And you're writing that to yourself. That's your own letter. It's very, very valuable. So that is writing the letter to yourself. Now, point 2, designated visualization time. What do I mean by this? Like I was saying before, when I was 6 years ago, when I first started Iron Health, I would commit 20 minutes every night to dedicated visualization. Now, this is the fun part, because this is where you get to use your creativity, and this is where you get to use your imagination. You have to bring that into play. Now, if you're not really a visual learner, find the way you are learning, but I'm going to describe it from the way of being a visual learner, because that's how I learn, right? So what do you want to do? How do you do this? Put it in your calendar first. Make sure you're holding yourself accountable, saying every day at 9 p.m., 10 p.m., I'm going to do visualization time. Have some music on. And I would say there's a lot of like different frequencies and just basic. Don't put words in the music. You actually want to make sure it's just sound. It's a lot better for your brain. It stimulates your brainwave. It's going to be a lot more easier to do it that way. You can also use other tasks as well, right? You can also use other tools as well for this aspect or this point. One tool would be there's something called the mind movies. And if you haven't heard of that, it's actually very powerful. It's very similar to a vision board, which is in essence where that 10-year goal, you have it up on a board and you're looking at it consistently. Now, I found an app which was actually recommended to me by someone who was a coach of mine, and it's called Mind Movies. And it is fantastic. What you do is you bring in your vision board into a movie, and you're syncing up a song to it as well. So you could sync up your own song, that's like your power song, and you're syncing up all the pictures in sync with your visualization or what you want your vision to look like. And they just run on repeat. Now, I've been doing this now for a couple months, and when you do hit something, it's cool because you can go in and adjust. I'm going to remove that. I'm going to add this. And what you're doing in this process, like me from a science background, again, you're training your brain. You're training your neurological system to see that this is real. This can happen, because it's not just a simple thought. Now you're putting a vision on it, a visualization on it. You're putting an image onto it. Putting an image onto it's powerful, and then it's sinking in your brain like it's already real. And you want to make sure you're doing that every single day. I think that is a key point there too. The visualization is not just some book that was written like The Secret or something like that. It's actually science-based. You're actually training your brain to see what you want to create or what you want. And you just have to do it repetitively. It's just like, for example, I'm Italian from Brooklyn, and one of our biggest behaviors is resentment. So I have to untrain that in my mind and my body, because that's a feeling that I was born with and I was raised with. The only way I'm going to do that is if I consistently catch it and then reframe it. I'm training it. Your neurological patterns in your head have to be reframed, and you have to do it consistently, just like you're training a muscle. Point 3, communicate your vision to people. Speak it into existence. So sometimes there's a lot of back and forth on whether you should be saying things or not, because sometimes it's like, oh, don't say it, don't let people know your moves. I believe that you have to talk about your vision for 2 reasons. One, you're speaking it into existence. You're holding yourself accountable. If you're saying, hey, I'm going to do this, or this is what I'm going to create, then now you're putting it out there. And guess what? You could check yourself based on that. Doesn't mean you can't adjust, but you could check yourself. And I think that's extremely valuable to say, this is what we're creating, this is where we're going. The second aspect of that is when you speak it into existence, or when you talk about it, you're getting people who are on your team to believe in you, and you're leading them, because you're not going to be doing this alone. So you need to be able to speak a vision into people so that they could follow you. Now, if you have any business or a service-based business that you want to scale, or you want to get to the point where it's not just you doing everything, you have to be able to communicate that vision. And you have to have a vision big enough that everyone fits into it. Because what's going to happen is if you don't have the opportunity for people to grow within your company, or you can't help them grow to what they want out of life, then they're just going to leave you. And that's the sad truth. That's how you lose talent. And trust me, I've done it in the past and it's happened to me. But speaking that and understanding what your people want is so important, because your vision needs to be bigger than theirs, because they need to be able to see that their vision can be caught in your vision. So that's so important to make sure you're talking about that daily. I heard somewhere that it takes about 7 times for people to really lock in something in their brain. And I notice it now more and more, the more I run my business, is I can't repeat enough and I can't communicate enough. For me, it's difficult because I'm actually like a visionary. So for me, I just think of something and I expect it to be done. But I need to communicate that better. If I'm not communicating to people, then they're not going to be able to bring that vision to reality. And that's the truth of it. So communication is key there, and speaking that vision and consistently speaking that vision. So to summarize all these points, right? Takeaways, the 3 points. Write a letter to yourself. 10 years from the future, you're writing it to the past self. You're putting gratitude in it, right? You're making sure it has everything you want to hit in it, the 5 F's. You want to start doing designated visualization time. Make it a part of your daily routine. If you're saying you don't have time for it, then if you're saying you don't have time for it, I can't help you, because everyone has time for it. Even if you have kids, if you have animals, if you have people, 10 minutes, that's it. That's all it takes. And the third one, communicate. Learn how to communicate better and speak it into existence. So if you guys like this podcast, let us know. I really want to grow the show. I want to deliver value to you guys. And the only way we're going to do that is if you share, like, comment. If you know someone in a service-based business, share this with them. It can help them a lot. I know the starting phases of running a business suck. It's lonely. And this is how we make sure that we come together and we're raising the standards of small business. Thanks for watching.